everyone. Welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. I'm your host, Jake Anderson, and tonight we should have a good show, a debate, and trying to work through a technical difficulty here, but we'll get it going. We're gonna have a debate, and it's gonna be about an issue that is important to all of us, which is war, and whether we should be fighting a war, specifically in North Korea. And one second here, people. But hopefully we're gonna have journalist Lou Cola Giovanni on to explain why he thinks we should have a preemptive war against North Korea. His internet is down, so I don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to see what we can get going here. We're going to have a debate, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. But who knows? Let me get my panel in here. And, sorry, just before the show started, I started feeling very nauseous. And so I'm working through that. But I'm of the opinion that we should not be preemptively going to war. But
you mean this news cycle is making you want to throw up, Jake?
Yeah, something made me feel very nauseous just before the show started. But I don't know. Basically, anytime I lose my concentration, I start feeling nauseous. But I don't know. Well, we'll see what's going to happen here as far as getting Lou on the show. It's always great finding out 20 minutes before the show starts that someone's internet is down. But So it goes. Hey, well, you know what? If you don't show up for the debate, that means you lose, right?
I think we're all losers here if this debate doesn't just become a stonewalling of what we did before, which was stop the war with Syria. I shouldn't say we, but I mean collective consciousness definitely played a role in that. And now it's back to build up city, in the Middle East, but I think everybody's worried about North Korea more than any country in the Middle East, simply because of the way they could disrupt global trade with, a barrage of missiles, and there's not a lot we could do about it.
Yeah. So we're also joined by journalist Claire Bernish. And Claire, how you doing tonight? Don't hear Claire, okay? And we have an honored guest, the king of anti-media, the founder of anti-media, journalist Nick Burnaby. Nick, how you doing tonight, buddy?
I'm doing really good. You can call me the king of anti-media, that's fine. Just don't call me the Trump of anti-media, because that would be a little insulting.
You're the Henry Kissinger of anti-media.
No, hell no. Well, you know what? I was looking forward to debating Lou tonight, and
yeah, I know, man. Me too. But I mean, I found out, 20 minutes before the show starts that his internet wasn't working, and I guess
sucks.
So that won't work for that side, and then
in North Korea right now.
UCY, yeah, he's in North Korea. UCY.TV apparently can't take calls, which is weird. So a two-pronged technical issue is stopping us from having the fun we wanted to have tonight. But, hey, the show got messed up last night, so now we can just do what we were going to do last night. And what I'll do is get Lou to come back with a functioning internet next week, and we'll just do this again. I mean, I don't think we'll be at war by then, so I'm also trying to get journalist Claire Bernish on. I don't know if she's added to the call yet. Claire, are you there? Yeah, all right, well. All right, so I'm going to bring up Lou's actual argument, and we can parse it. But in the meantime, let's just have the conversation we were going to have last night, which is we have the war drums pounding, and we see the media doing the same bullshit they were doing prior to Iraq. And there's a lot of strange issues that are coming up with North Korea. There's a lot of things we're finding out now about North Korea and what could incentivize us, which is, one, they sit on like $1 trillion mineral field, and there's an opium trade there that could work out. And we're going to have Claire talk about that a little bit, because it sounds like the debate is going to have to wait till next week, which really chaps my ass. But anyway, Claire.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, Claire, do I have you on the call?
I'm here.
Okay, great. All right. Well, we still have a rock star panel, and Nick, actually, I think this is the first time you've ever called into the Thursday show. You host it on Mondays and Wednesdays, but this week you got lucky. The show got canceled Monday and Wednesday. Or you thought you were lucky. You thought you got out of doing the radio this week. Isn't that right?
Yeah, dude. I thought that was it, man. I thought I was off for the rest of the week, and but you know what? Drastic times call for drastic measures, right?
Yeah.
We're in a period now of just more and more of this fear mongering. Like they're trying to turn North Korea, I guess one of the poorest, most economically poor, technologically hobbled countries in the world, into this worldwide boogeyman, right? And we're led to believe that it's the United States' obligation to be the policeman of the world and to be the policeman of North Korea. However, we're always told that South Korea is so successful and they're so rich, and they are. South Korea is one of the biggest economies in the world. Compared to North Korea, it's like zero compared to like 1,000. It's the difference is just mind-boggling. South Korea has the fastest internet on the earth. North Korea, most of the people there don't even have access to internet. South Korea has one of the highest standards of living on earth. A lot of the people in North Korea don't even have access to steady electricity. But at the same time, we're told the United States must step in and go over there and tell North Korea, hey guys, we don't want you researching a certain technology or doing certain things with certain technologies. Even though they haven't actually killed anybody outside of Korea, I don't think ever. I can't recall any time in history that North Korea killed anybody outside of the Korean Peninsula. And we have to remember that North and South Korea were divided up between the Soviet Union and the United States. It wasn't like North and South Korea decided one day, they're like, you know what, we have our differences, we're just going to split. That's not what happened. The U.S. and the Soviet Union split them up after World War II. And they've kind of been at odds ever since. Yes, North Korea provoked, I don't want to say provoked, but North Korea initiated the war against the South. It started trying to invade the South, and then the United States stepped in, and of course that's what became the Korean War. And eventually it pitted U.S.-backed and U.S. troops against actually China. I think it's probably the only time the United States has ever come in direct conflict with China was actually fighting in Korea.
Well, we actually saved them in World War II.
Yeah.
You know, the Japanese Empire was on the verge of essentially just taking them over for good, and the only reason that they didn't is because we started attacking them in their flank, I guess you could say, at that point. So, yeah, it's a strange turn of events. It's weird what happens when ideologies like communism just kind of sweep in and change everything.
Yeah, and at the same time, I think, that's part of the reason why China didn't really, once they pushed the U.S. and the U.S.-backed South Korean forces back to the, 38th parallel, I think. Once they did that, it wasn't like, oh, well, China is now just fighting the U.S. I think China kind of backed off a little bit and said, okay, like, we're not going to directly fight you guys. We understand you bailed us out in World War II because, yeah, the Japanese were committing genocide against us, basically. And so then it was kind of like, okay, we pushed you guys back because you got too close to our borders, and let's just let the Koreans handle the rest. And, and of course it wound up being a stalemate. And a bunch of people needlessly ended up dying because the borders really didn't change much. The entire war, it was kind of like a little World War I over there in East Asia, where it's kind of, you're fighting over these little lines drawn out on the earth, and you only wound up moving just several meters in either direction, and then a bunch of millions of people wound up dying for that. Like what was actually accomplished? Nothing was accomplished, but a bunch of people died, and the memories are still there. People are still salty from what went on during the Korean War. And, I know a lot of U.S. veterans are still alive. In fact, my grandpa, who was drafted into during the Korean War era, he didn't actually go to Korea, but he was drafted into the military at that time. He went and was put over in, I think he was in Italy, stationed over there. But, my own grandpa was drafted. He didn't believe in the war either. And there are a lot of guys that were drafted. And then, of course, on the North Korean side, there's a lot of people who wound up dying unjustly. There was huge, basically, I don't know what you want to call them, terror campaigns. They were bombing cities out. They were just bombing out cities. The U.S. was. And it caused a lot of hatred, a lot of distrust. And the North Korean people, they don't like the United States very much. And, of course, a lot of that has to do with propaganda, but a lot of it is rooted in reality, man. Like, we did a lot of horrible shit, so they don't like us. So, there's a lot of complicated history. It's not just, oh, this Kim Jong dude is crazy and, he's just this lunatic. First of all, the Kims were placed in power by the Soviets, and so it's a really complicated situation that the media has kind of just simplified to where it's like, well, North Korea hates the United States and they keep threatening to bomb us, so we must do something about it. Really, that's how it's been boiled down and crystallized in the media, and of course the politicians with their anti-North Korean talking points. I mean, it's just, I don't know, man. It's just a real big mess. And I'll tell you what. Here's what I was going to bring up in the debate, if it were to happen. We don't have a great track record of liberating people. We've not done a good job of freeing people from dictatorships. In fact, every instance that I can remember, looking back at just that recent history, the last two countries that we heavily involved ourselves in were last three, I guess, Afghanistan, Iraq, and Libya. All three of those countries are not even arguably, they are worse off now than they were before we involved ourselves. So,
we created, massive power vacuums in places where, and this was the argument I was going to bring up to Lou, which is Iraq and Libya, and Afghanistan actually, all three had massive human rights issues with the Taliban, Saddam Hussein, and Gaddafi, respectively. And all of the people, numerous crimes against humanity committed against their own people. And, so what makes that any different than North Korea, except that North Korea has a complete madman at the helm who has access to nuclear weapons and who has specifically said, if you attack, we won't attack you with a nuke unless you attack us. So it seems like a pretty cut and dry argument, but we'll get into that. I want to bring in, just before the show started, Claire sent me an article that I believe she had written. I'm not entirely sure. It was from the Free Thought Project. Now, Claire, this had to do with the opium trade. Now, is there an issue regarding opium with North Korea?
Yeah, actually, it's been surmised that North Korea has the second largest opium poppy crop population on the planet, next to, of course, Afghanistan. People who have defected have said in interviews that they had cultivated like just these mass fields of opium poppies. Now, there were so many impetuses for war in Afghanistan. Opium was one of them for certain, but also were minerals. And the same case seems to be unfolding in North Korea. When we look at, there is a multifaceted history between the North and South. However, right now, the U.S. has installed is in the process of installing its THAAD defense system in South Korea, very close to the North Korean border. And that's highly offensive, of course, to North Korea. Now, the South Korean government wanted it there, but the South Korean people are pissed the hell off that it's there. So it's not as if this is the people versus the people in this situation. Now, arguably, the people in the North are very much kept in the dark because of that particular regime. And that's another thing to consider. There is no impetus for war here. We are not actually threatened. The U.S., our government is actually causing the threat by having that defense system right there on the border, by essentially downplaying or essentially playing North Korea as the threat when North Korea, as you said, has only said, we will defend ourselves with nukes if we're fired upon with nukes. Our media, our mainstream media has completely skewed that as expected. And we're in a really dangerous propaganda war right now because it's, North Korea is being made to seem like this horrific enemy, which there's no doubt that they'd probably fire something in defense, but we're provoking them. This is Trump's mess. There was some buildup, but it's not their mess. They're acting as a threatened animal for a good reason because we're causing that threat.
Yeah, and Lou's. I mean, I'll let Lou make his own argument, but essentially he's saying that it would basically his argument was that it would be the first morally justified war since World War II because of the dictatorship and the crimes against his own people that are being committed there. But I think unlike World War II, the world is such a different place now, and particularly the U.S. is in such shit right now. We have so many domestic problems, and we have just spent 15 years waging an imperialist war abroad in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Yemen, Syria, multiple other countries.
Wait, can I add to that also? What about the number of homeless percentage or proportion to the number of empty homes in this country? And take a look at our homeless problems and our problems of the impoverished and the stratification of wealth. Not that I'm advocating some sort of odd solution there, but I'm just saying it's not as if we don't have similar problems here. Wanting to wage war in yet another country against essentially the populace is yet again ignoring every single problem going on in this country.
I think any of the leaders of those respective countries could have, ironically, at one point said, we are going to push for a regime change in the United States because the government treats its people so horribly. And it would have been a justified statement. And I think it was Iran recently made the statement, who are you to tell anyone, to us, who are you to say to anyone how to treat your own people, or something to that effect. I want to bring DB into this. DB, I saw something, and maybe you know more about it. I saw an article regarding the minerals that lay beneath North Korea, and that it's something like a $2 or $3 trillion valuation. Do you know anything about that?
It's well, essentially what a lot of people may or may not know is that entire peninsula and then Manchuria was all part of the Japanese Empire, and there's a complex buried right in the heart of the center of North Korea called Chosun. And Chosun's sitting on top of probably the world's richest uranium mine. And what people probably just can't really fathom is how many nuclear mortars North Korea has, making it almost impossible to invade it because they could just retaliate with nukes, mini nukes. And this mine it's basically you can't exhaust it. I mean, they've been mining this for probably almost 100 years before they even knew what to do with the stuff. They were mining it, and it's surrounded by anti-aircraft batteries as well, and it was never it was never impregnated really during World War II, and it's just impossible to get to it now. And yeah, man, it's part of it. It's the poppies too. It's the uranium, and then they have a little bit of diamond action.
So might I proffer a theory here? And this is a perfect time for it because I probably wouldn't have gone into this if Lou were on. Let me propose a theory here. So North Korea has always been on the axis of evil since the Project for a New American Century and, of course, Bush's famous decree of putting them on the axis of evil. We've since gone to war with many of the countries that were slated for invasion. Might I suggest that the reason we haven't gone to North Korea yet is because the establishment was worried that, if we go do something with North Korea and they nuke us, well, now no one will ever trust us again and we'll be the bad guys. But now that they have Trump in office, let's use the wild card and we'll have Trump do the North Korea war, because if it goes wrong, we'll just blame it on Trump. Makes perfect sense to me. This was always their plan. And maybe, as some people suggest, they intended on Trump getting elected the whole time, or at the very least, this was their backup plan. If Trump gets in, well, let's just have the crazy man go to war with the crazy man.
We need to go back to things a year ago we were talking to and pull up some of these shows we've done, because we were arguing that if Hillary got in, we would have been immediately at war with Russia and Iran openly over Syria. And now that's scaled back, and Asia pivoted courtesy of Obama, and now we're in the Asian theater. And this is really about containing China. If people think it's anything else, you're not looking at big picture. I mean, if the Koreas reunite, then China becomes basically stuck. They can't come our way with a unified Korea and Japan. So that's what it's about. It's geopolitics for the next 50 to 100 years right here.
And interestingly, that wasn't even going to be part of Lou's argument. So we're getting into, Lou is the ghost in the room here. God, I really was in the mood for a debate tonight. But, oh well, I guess there's more important issues here than just gratifying my own ego. Although
there's another layer of this. There's another layer. There are another couple layers to this North Korea thing, and with Trump in particular. And I'm writing on this, and it should be out soon, I'm hoping. But Pence is, by some people's estimation, the true kind of desired president. So giving an impetus for Trump to be impeached so that Pence can take office also sort of applies here. That's not actually very much a tinfoil theory. That's kind of a mainstream theory. So, check it out. But there's that. And the fact that the opium that North Korea does produce would make a handy addition to that we get from Afghanistan, because Trump just declared the opioid epidemic a national emergency today.
Yes.
So that's convenient as well. So we have to look at all of these different facets. It's kind of amazing.
And then how about this? There's been talk recently of privatizing the Afghan war, and then Trump recently said, hey, why don't we just go take their shit? Basically openly saying, hey, why don't we take their minerals and resources?
There's another thing with that too, because Pence, guess who is a longtime donor to Pence? Eric Prince, from Blackwater, who wants to privatize that war. So
Yeah.
there's another layer.
And he's also the brother of Betsy DeVos, or Devos, whatever you call her, the Secretary of Education.
Wrinkles,
and then
wrinkles within wrinkles within wrinkles.
And her she's connected to Eric Prince in some way, who's running XC and Academy.
That's what we're talking about, dude. She's her brother.
Yeah, they're siblings.
Jesus. So they're gonna have armed security at all schools.
Hear that, ladies and
Oh,
gentlemen?
and
We just figured it out.
her husband founded Amway.
And they're
I'm
tied
serious.
they're tied to the Koch brothers for sure. Then
Yeah.
There's definitely a concerted effort here because we know how this works now. We've seen it. We've come of age with it. Many of us, we came of age with it, and we know how this works now. When the media starts trumpeting war and talking about it obsessively, the decision has already been made to go to war. And we now have to figure out, they're not doing it for humanitarian reasons, okay?
Bag the dog. Bag the dog.
Despite
whatever Lou's argument was going to be, and actually,
well, we can't invade, so that's a moot point. How are we gonna break people out of those?
They're gonna try something that we haven't seen before.
We can't break those people out of those camps without them just killing them all. The best thing we could do for North Korea would be to we should just airdrop in a bunch of arms.
Well, this is what I think is going to happen, and I'm just going to go on record saying that this is what I think is going to happen. I think basically what we're going to see, and again, this is just a prediction. I could be wrong, but I think we're going to see another massive financial hack. This time, 100 times bigger than we saw from Sony, from the supposed North Korea Sony hack. It's going to be 100 times bigger. It's going to screw up our economy in a controlled way. It'll be a controlled fire. It'll be a what's it called when they make the fire happen?
Burn off.
It'll be a burn off, and it will be basically a false flag financial attack, and they will use that as the impetus to go to war with North Korea. And I don't think it'll be a land invasion. I don't think it'll be anything like that. I think they've got weapons now that we don't know about, and I'm sure they're frothing at the mouth waiting to use them. And I think this is when we're going to see it happen. And God forbid if they screw up and he gets that ICBM to Hawaii, our world is changed forever. So this is a scary time, and we're on the West Coast. Me and Nick, we're on the West Coast. From all reports, the ICBM can't quite reach us yet, but Jesus, I mean, when it comes to a nuclear weapon, I really don't like Russian roulette. No pun intended. I mean, I don't think this is very smart. I don't think we should be poking a tiger in a cage like this. And this is scary. And I don't know, Nick, I don't know if you've had, thoughts about this as well, but I've gotten emails from my mom who worries about me because both of her children are on the West Coast. And you have a nation of paranoid people. And as Anti-Media reported this week, NBC's Brian Williams came right out and said, our job is to scare the absolute hell out of people, to keep people in a state of fear. And that's exactly what they're doing. And people are scared out of their minds right now. Because, rather than back away and try and control the situation, we have Trump firing up this rhetoric with language that sounds like the leader of North Korea itself, fire and fury. This is insane language. This is insane propaganda. And I mean, if we see this turn into a nuclear war, there will be many, many people at fault. But of course, at that point, it won't matter. Once that first nuclear weapon goes off in the 21st century, people will forget the build-up to it. They'll forget everything that had anything to do with it, and all it will be is just World War III.
It's all the same fabrications all over again. I mean, this is it's embarrassing how brazen this all is, and people are falling for it. I mean, I understand that the way propaganda works so effectively is that there is a degree of truth to it. You know, we're seeing part of we're seeing part of the picture on this side. Like, we're seeing that conditions are really bad there, so it must be a humanitarian war that we're going to wage. I mean, yeah, that might be true, but there's a whole lot more to the picture that's not being considered that really needs to be.
When was the last when was the last time the U.S. did a real war based on humanitarian reasons? There is none. There is none. Like, it's always for our assets, our resources that we want. There's no such thing as the U.S. launching a war for humanitarian reasons. It doesn't exist. Ah, man. This is just, we could have great things. This is why we can't have nice things, people, is because we have a government that literally is obsessed with war. We have a defense contractor industry that...
It's the business model, Jake. I think sometimes it's not even personal. It's really not. It's just these dudes, they can't think of anything else to do. This is a finite world with an infinite growth system, and the only thing that infinitely grows is destroying and rebuilding.
But it's because of their lack of imagination. We could have growth. The sky is the limit. 100 years.
But they're gone, dude. I think this is a different show here, but I think breakaway civilization is more likely than the fact that we're not in space.
Well, I agree with you there, but let's keep it earthbound today. I mean, just because...
I mean, but there's the resource suck. One of them's like distracting everyone from the fact that they're just sucking away trillions, somehow controlling all these illicit black market horrible things around the world.
How about this for a war? I have a war. This would be a good war. This would be a war that I would support. James Cameron got a team together, and he wanted to go to an asteroid and mine it for resources. Let's do a massive public-private venture to go to an asteroid and mine it for resources. This would be good for several reasons. One, it would get the space program up off its ass, actually doing something. And we would get resources. It would get us into space. It'd be preparing us for the space age. If you guys want to spend $10 trillion on a military venture, let's get it up into space. They're already militarizing the space. Why don't we actually use it for something? Let's go to Mars. Let's go to an asteroid. Let's set up a colony on the moon. Let's set up a space stead. Why don't we do that?
How about we fix some infrastructure, and how about we fix some things like the extreme poverty that's still existent in the Western world, and the even worse poverty that's existent elsewhere? How about we actually fix this freaking planet for once, instead of worrying about who we're going to go to war with or what we're going to gain from what thing?
That's not going to happen because we have a private industry that is predicated on fossil fuels and greed. And they blame it on government regulations as to why they're not more humanitarian.
Until we shift that as a populace on this planet, and the people who are not in power for the most part, until we shift that, they're not going to. It's up to us to do that. And until if we sit around and say, well, too bad, they're not going to change their manner of thinking. Well, of course not. We got to pull our money out of whatever it is that their money is in and make it hurt so that they want to do the change that we actually want to make happen.
If a supernova went off and sent highly charged ion particles of a degree we've never seen before toward the Earth, it would eviscerate our atmosphere and kill us. This could happen at any time. Any time. I mean, sometime within 100,000 years it's going to happen. But if it happened, that'd be the end of us. We need to get off the Earth. We can't have all our eggs in one basket. Secondly,
what prevents it from happening elsewhere?
Secondly, this is the libertarian dream. A decentralized space stead. They're already trying to do seasteads, but it's impossible to do on Earth. Let's get Musk. Let's get one of these fucking super libertarian billionaires to do a space stead. Start the society that people want to see. And let's see if we could have an agorist space community, something like that. We got to start thinking outside the box, because I'm telling you what, we're not going to solve our problems right now. With this current paradigm, it's just not going to happen. The government's going to keep going to war, and private industry is going to keep doing whatever they have to do to make money.
The government can't go to war if nobody shows up to fight it. I'm just saying.
Well, we already know there's people that will show up to fight it. It happens every time.
We have to convince them not to. That's my point. Like, there are things that we can still do that might actually make a difference. Like,
I agree with you,
like Veterans for Peace and things. I know that this is fatally optimistic. I understand that. However, I'm still not giving up.
You're normally not very optimistic either, so this is a special moment, Claire.
It must be because I'm sick.
Hey, one of the things I was kind of thinking of because of this conversation was just looking at the similarities between Afghanistan and North Korea. We already talked about opium, and now we talk about how they've both got trillions in minerals. The other thing that is in common with North Korea and Afghanistan is they both share a border with China. So again, this goes back to the Asia pivot, and the whole point here is that all this stuff with North Korea is about dealing with China. That's all it is. It's by proxy we're trying to deal with China, and it's. If you look back, looking back at the first Korean War, as I mentioned earlier, at the very beginning of this program, that was the first and last time that the U.S. ever really fought against China, like where actual U.S. soldiers were shooting at Chinese soldiers, and that was back during the Korean War when China intervened because the U.S. the UN got too close to the Chinese border, and they pushed him back. So if we think that Trump is going to just start dropping bombs on North Korea and China is just going to sit on their hands and be like, oh yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. And the other thing, and we know that this is about containing China, but it's also about depriving China of those resources, man. Like the minerals that are in Afghanistan, the minerals that are in North Korea. I mean, we don't even know. China's probably helping them right now, and this is probably what a lot of these sanctions are about, is cutting off the flow of minerals going into China. I bet you anything that's what a lot of these sanctions are going to probably be doing. So this is more calculated, I think, than it seems.
No, I agree with you. I think this is calculated, and I've got some firsthand knowledge of people who were in the military, fought in Afghanistan, told me that they go in there, they get the opium fields, the army goes in there. So basically what I'm saying is the taxpayer pays for the army to go in to Afghanistan, secure the opium field, not destroy them, not burn them. And then they hand it over to some shadowy group they only know them as Black Ops. We don't know if they're private contractors. We don't know if they're actual Black Ops, government people. We don't know if they're CIA, whatever they are. But basically, the U.S. taxpayer pays for the army to go into places like Afghanistan, and probably if we do fight with North Korea, the same situation. We pay for them to go in. They secure the opium field. The opium field gets privatized, more or less. They sell the opium to the pharmaceutical industry, which turns it into opiates. And that fuels our opiate crisis that Trump just today, like you were saying, Jake, Trump is declaring it a national emergency that we have an opiate crisis. All this stuff is interconnected, dude. Like they're going to these countries for they don't go to a country just because we don't just want one thing. We didn't go to Afghanistan just because we wanted opium. We went to Afghanistan because we wanted opium, we wanted minerals, we wanted a boogeyman to chase in Osama bin Laden. Wanted to also deprive China of resources, and we wanted to get a position on Russia because right when we're in Afghanistan, we're super close right up on Russia. It gives us a strategic position encircling both Russia and China. So we go into these places for
bunch of reasons. We don't go for just one reason. And so North Korea, dude, it's a bunch of different things, and this stuff is calculated. There's a reason why we went over there in the first place back in the 50s.
Absolutely, yeah.
So this is just they're trying to carry out the same policies that they've been trying to carry out since the 50s. That's what they're doing.
If I can add a couple more layers to what Nick said, there's, the opioid crisis, of course, it involves a lot of prescription drugs, but it also involves, illicit opioids like heroin. And so it fuels the drug war, which fuels the police crisis and the social issues, which, I mean, there are a number of layers there. And then also, if you look at, you have Big Pharma, the Big Pharma picture, where not only does Big Pharma benefit from the opioids and the opium poppies that they get to reap in both places, but Big Pharma also gets to come up with the cures, the quote-unquote cures for these, and all the tests and the pharmaceuticals that supposedly fight opioid addiction, and including potential patents on synthetic cannabis and things like that kind of supplant the people's choice to be able to treat themselves the way they want to when, they choose. And I mean, there's all sorts of layers on top of layers there as well. So the people who benefit from war is so multi-layered, multi-textured that it's almost impossible to just say, hey, let's not go to war. It's inevitable. It's going to happen.
I think it's important for people to remember that everything they see in the media, I think this is the most important point I could make. Everything you see in the media, whether it's on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, or NPR, or PBS, any of your main news channels, you're seeing issues that were carefully curated and contextualized by the State Department and by the mega corporate giants that are controlling the landscape here. So you're not seeing a real issue. You're seeing a fabricated issue. And you're seeing the end result of a corporate state selling itself to itself. So be scared, but also just remember there's an agenda behind what you're seeing.
Yeah, and they're so good at it too, right? They're so good at crafting this propaganda that you got people out there who are, generally speaking, people who think mostly like you and I, who just want to be left alone. They want to embrace freedom. They want to live their life. They want to be, prosperous and that. You got regular people convinced that we're actually this time around in North Korea. I mean, yeah, they'll say, yeah, Iraq was dumb, Libya was dumb, Syria's a mess. We should have never got involved. But North Korea is actually, we're actually doing the right thing this time. It's like, that's how good these guys are at propaganda, that they've got people convinced who normally would not even fall for this kind of shit. They got people convinced, like, yeah, this is actually, we'd be doing the right thing here. This war is, this time around, we're actually doing the right thing. Like, we're helping people. Dude, like, that's what they do every time. Like, every single war, like, when Libya was happening, we look back at Libya today and we're like, damn, Libya was a mess. We shouldn't have taken out Gaddafi. But during that time, I mean, almost everybody was like, yeah, Gaddafi's horrible. We got to go save people from their own bad government. And, the same could be said about Saddam Hussein, even though there was a pretty big resistance to the Iraq war here in the U.S. at the time. But, the same could be said. People were under the impression that we were actually liberating Iraq. It was Operation Iraqi Freedom, quote unquote. And we were actually doing the right thing. We're going to help these people. We're going to bring them democracy. But look at the result. It's easy to say, yeah, I wish that North Korea's government wasn't bad. Shit, I wish the American government wasn't bad either. But it's one thing to say, yeah, I wish that wasn't the case. It's a whole nother thing to say, we can go over there and make it right. We can't.
And remember,
we have to try
once again, this is an example of you socialize the costs and privatize the profits. In this case, the American people are paying for the wars. Who is going to profit? The defense contractors and the media. Media profits huge off of war because during war, people tune into the mainstream media like never before. And that's why you see the mainstream media bloviating and romanticizing war, such as when Brian Williams compared the attacks on Syria or Afghanistan or whichever one it was but he was quoting Leonard Cohen. He was quoting a Leonard Cohen song saying how the bombs were beautiful. They love war. They love natural disasters. They love death and destruction. This is disaster capitalism. Naomi Klein penned that. And never before has it been more accurate with climate change and with everything. Disaster capitalism, they're making money off of the suffering of the masses. They have no intention of stopping it.
It's also modified shock doctrine.
Yes. Yes. So, I guess to anyone listening out there, this probably sounded a bit like a clusterfuck of theories, but I guess, what a takeaway from this is to just do not rely on factual news. Okay, there's facts and then there's truth. The facts are just the data coming off of the ground. The truth is the reason. The truth is why we're there. And the truth is that national corporate security state has been in a state of pretty much a nationwide coup since September 11th. And the world has changed. Our country has changed. And they want to be at war, and they're going to continue to make us at war. I mean, at this point, we are anesthetized to it. We are okay with it. People are used to it. They expect us to drop a bomb on Syria every day. They expect us to do a drone strike on Yemen, backed by Saudi Arabia, giving money to the Saudis, the very Saudis that have this, backwards culture that Hillary Clinton was, says is so anti-feminist, or but at the same time she's supporting it. We do not have a functional ideology of truth running this government right now. And until we do, it's going to be chaos and death. And maybe we don't have chaos and death here, but like Claire said, it's all interconnected. These opiate fields are leading to an opiate crisis here. And the cops are used to crack down on it, and the private prisons are profiting off of it. And until that changes, the cycle will keep going on and on and on. It's not even just about oil anymore. It's whatever resource and whatever leverage and tool they can use to make war profitable. And, like DB, like you said, this is just... this is how they make money now. This is the business model. I think I saw it on Anti-Media. I'm not for sure, but America, it was a meme. It might have been someone else, but, America is simply a giant oil corporation at this point, a war corporation, and this isn't going to turn out well. But, this North Korea thing is terrifying because... unlike with Afghanistan and Iraq and Libya, all of which had authoritarian, hideous dictatorships, North Korea has been working on a nuclear weapon for a while, and they've been testing it. And when you mess with them, you're also messing with China. So this is a dangerous situation. I wasn't super worried about World War III until this latest salvo of propaganda calling for war. And this is how Trump is going to win re-election. This is how Trump is going to finally hold hands with the deep state, which is that war with North Korea will help him, help his approval ratings, and will get him re-elected because people will be scared out of their minds. You're not going to
There's a counter option. There's a counter option, though, and this is like the Pence theory, if you will, because Trump could very easily push us into nuclear war with North Korea, which would be grounds for impeachment, and thus, bring in the whole kind of theocracy, the fascistic theocracy that we're looking at too. So there's even another possibility there.
Yeah, there is. I mean, I think the wrinkle with that one is that Trump, even though it's a relatively small percentage of the population, he still has a massive cult following of people that will have openly stating they will take up arms if he's removed from office. I didn't believe it at one point, but I do believe we will see a some kind of attempted coup if Trump is thrown out of office. And of course, what that does is it just allows the militarized police to flex their muscles and further consolidate the militarized police. We're up shit creek without a paddle right now, guys. What the hell can we do? They've got us at every angle we turn. There is a corporate security state that has us in check.
It's hard, man. It's hard. Like, really, all we can do is start clocking out, right? And withdrawing our support, voting and all that stuff. These motherfuckers don't listen. They don't listen. They take our money. What we have to do is stop giving them money and stop participating in their system. And start leading by example, dude, and just decentralizing. I think that's really the key. And I don't care what your ideology is. I don't give a shit if you're consider yourself a capitalist, a socialist, or anything in between. I think most people can agree that decentralization is pretty much a principle which would lead to less and less corruption. And if there is corruption in a decentralized scenario, at least you can do something about it, because you're much more likely to be able to effect change in your city council meeting than you are at convincing Trump on Twitter to not bomb North Korea. I mean, I think there's a very slim chance of that actually working. On the other hand, you could actually go to the city council meeting and maybe, even, I hate to say it, but intimidate people more or less to make sure they're doing the right thing or not doing something stupid. Decentralization of everything. I'm talking business, food, health, politics, finance, basically, as much as can be decentralized should be. That really is the one principle that we should focus on that can now finally start withdrawing power from the federal government and its ability to wage war. Because really, the only thing the government has left to wage war with is our tax money, which is kind of starting to sink because, the real economy is stagnant, more or less. Of course, Wall Street is going up a lot, but that's a whole different story. But the real economy is a little bit stagnant. That's the reason people like Trump and Bernie Sanders were gaining traction in this last election. So the tax base is not growing as fast as the spending. We all know that because we got this huge deficit, this huge debt, and every kid is born now with like $60,000 in debt. And how many trillions of dollars is the U.S. Dealing with in a deficit? But it's a lot. So if we start taking away from that, we put power back into our own hands, and we reduce the power of the federal government, which is mismanaged and done corrupt things, and now is basically a government version of like the Dutch East Indies Corporation, more or less, is kind of like what the U.S. government has become. And if we starve the beast will, eventually it'll die. It'll maybe have one last little hoorah. Maybe that's what's going on right now with North Korea or whatever. And sooner or later it dies, but that doesn't mean that we have to die or that we have to have a really bad time while it's happening. If we do it in the correct way, our lives will be better off on the other end. I mean, if we start practicing these ideas and this is something that I've been getting into a lot more recently, and the Decentralize Your Life tour recently came to San Diego. Derek Bros,
yeah.
All of his team with the Houston Freethinkers came down, and I hosted them at my place, and we had their presentation here at the World Beat Center, and it speaks truth. It's non-political stuff. Decentralization is non-political. Of course,
And Nick, I know you're into decentralized currency. Both you and I are invested in cryptocurrency and whatnot, and that's part of it. That's just one small part of it.
Yeah, that's just part of it. Decentralized finance, decentralized business, decentralized politics, healthcare, food, food and water, electricity is another big one. Those are the big ones. Food, water, and electricity, those things supersede politics, and they supersede everything else. I mean, politics is, like I was saying in one of our recent shows, politics should really be an afterthought. Politics should only be like 1% of your life, and that's one of the problems in the United States is we have this kind of nanny state. I've spent a lot of time in Mexico recently, and I've realized there is a big difference. Mexico has an administrative state. The United States has a nanny state. There's a big difference. An administrative state is more or less kind of hands off, and they just kind of take a little bit of tax, and they more or less leave you alone and let you kind of do your business. They're more lax on like zoning. They're more lax on regulation and permitting and licensing and all that stuff. On the other hand, the U.S. has become this big giant nanny state where I shared an article yesterday about how people, like Airbnb, but people are like turning their own home kitchens into little restaurants, and there's an app where you can sell food out of your own kitchen and make food for people, and you kind of make a side income doing it. And I was arguing with people who were commenting there should be some kind of regulations involved so that people don't get sick and all that. It's like, dude, you guys are killing,
missing the point. Yeah,
the government in between everything,
Great.
Everything. You can't even make food in your own kitchen and hand it out to people without someone coming along and saying, well, there should be a law involved in that. It's it's a nanny state.
Great points. All right, we're up against it. Thanks for everyone joining. Go to Claire.
Like I told you, I'm here with the dreams we pursuing, but call it a reality, cause there's no illusion. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.